perspectives, we're here to inspect it. I'm a small nut, a medium, let us escape from this tedium.
Hello and welcome back to Paranormal Perspectives. My name's Stan, and as always I have my co-host and medium Christine. Hello, how are you doing? Great to have you back as always.
Yeah, I'm doing good. Yourself?
Yeah, great, thank you. And you're always with us sporting very snazzy glasses. I do love your colour. That's me in my black and white at the moment. I tend to wear pretty much black most of the time. But yeah. And so tonight we're just continuing our conversation with everyday people like myself who've experienced quite extraordinary things. We're all about celebrating the unknown, trying to understand each other, and just simply show each other that it's okay to talk about these previously known as spooky things, but they're not really spooky. It's just part of the natural world, basically. So so tonight we have Sue with us. Hi, Sue. Thanks for being here.
Hi, thank you for having me. My name is Suezan. I live in Cornwall in England. I'm now a photographer. I've been a singer in my past, and I've run holiday parks, and I'm also a genealogist. I've been tracing my family tree and helping people in America and Australia for the last 25 years. The first thing I want to tell you about, because I think out of them it's the most interesting, was the boy in the cemetery. I was compiling headstones down at a cemetery in a village called St. Earth, which is a lovely little village. It's more like a hamlet. Where the church is situated, it's down the bottom of the hill, whereas all the housing is at the top of the hill. That will make sense to you in a bit. It was a lovely summer's evening. My husband used to go and do it with me because we used to talk into a dictaphone, as it was then, read out all the headstones. I'd go home, type them up, send them to RootsWeb, and they'd be published in booklets and sent around the world. So this particular evening, which was a summer's evening, I would say it would have been about June, July time, and it was a good maybe 15 years ago now. Time goes on. We went down to St. Earth, and we walked in through the gate where they have the stone where they put the coffins when they bring them in. And the first thing I noticed to the right was a graveyard for the plague victims from the 15 and 1600s, which was quite interesting. And then I walked up the path, and the old church was there. Around the inside of the walls of the church were all these headstones, which were sort of 1500s and whatever. And because they'd fallen over, they'd attached them to the walls of the church so that they weren't destroyed and people could find them. So that's where I started doing my dictation while my husband went to the left of the cemetery. I got about halfway through them, and someone asked me, I heard a voice to my left say, "What are you doing?" And I'm not really a kid fan. I've never had them, so they just don't interest me. And I turned around, and there was a child stood to my left. And I thought, is he going to a fancy dress or something? Because if you think about the film Oliver and what an urchin would look like, that's what he looked like. He had like slip-on cloth shoes. He was very pale. He had like serge brown trousers on, which finished sort of between his knee and his ankle. And he had like a creamy linen shirt on, brown hair, very dark brown eyes. And he was carrying like a metal pole, which I don't know what it was for, but it reminded me of something that you would pick rubbish up with like a spike on the end of it. And I said to him, oh, well, I'm just, this recording machine of mine was still running. I said to him, I'm just collecting all the headstones and things, recording them. So he said, why? So I explained why, because they go into booklets and are sent around the world so that people who can't afford to come to the UK can find their families and know where they're buried. It gives them a sense of growing their families, if you like. And he just kept saying, why? And it started to really naff me off, to be honest, because I was trying to we had like a couple of hours of really good light, and I just wanted to get on with it. So I said, look, I ain't being funny. I won't tell you exactly what I said, but I said, will you go away? So I turned around to look at what I was doing, and I turned back and he'd gone. And I didn't think anything of it. I thought, I got rid of him, lovely, and carry on. So I finished around the church and I shouted over to my husband, "Did you see that kid?" And he said, "Yeah, I saw a kid like near you and over there somewhere mooching around." So I said, "Oh, he was getting on my nerves." So I said, "Never mind, we'll carry on." So we was working our way up the cemetery and I said to my husband, "Isn't it lovely that the cemetery goes all the way back and behind the wall at the top, there's no housing, there's nothing, there's just fields?" And he said, "Yeah, it's unusual sort of these days," and thought no more of it, carried on with what I was doing. And I came to a crypt, but above ground crypt that had 6 slates on it, well, 5 slates because one was missing. And I started again talking into my dictaphone, listing who was in this grave. And again, I heard this voice, this time to the right of me, say, "You have to find who's in the missing slate." And it was this kid again. And I said, "Well, I can't find it, can I? Because it's missing." And I said, "I've already told you go away." I said, "I've got to get on with this tonight because otherwise I've got to travel all the way, 4 miles back down the road to carry on another day." And he said, "No, you have to find out whose name that is." So I said, "Look, you can see on the ground, there's no slate on the ground. It's obviously been tidied up. There's no way that from here tonight I can find out who's in that grave." And he just kept on, "You really must find out. You really must find out." And I said, "Look, I've told you once. I ain't going to keep saying it. Just go away. Let me get on with what I'm doing." So I turned around, looked at the gravestone, turned back, and he was gone. And I thought at the time, oh, he's hiding somewhere or playing in the churchyard, or he ain't dressed like that, you know. I mean, it wasn't a fancy dress thing, obviously, and he didn't have any friends around. It was just in the churchyard. There was me, my husband, and this child that kept appearing. So I turned around and said to my husband, "That kid just turned up again." And he said, "Well, I didn't see it that time." I said, "Well, I did, and I was doing this headstone or crypt," and he kept on about me finding out who the missing person was. So I turned around and looked back to the back of the churchyard, and I said to Barry, "Where have those roofs come from?" And he said, What I said, "Look." So he looked, and at behind the wall, at the back of the churchyard, were all these roofs. There were houses there. But both of us, when we went in, saw there was nothing there. And we couldn't get our heads around how 1 minute they're not there, and the next minute there's like a bungalow estate on the other side of this wall. And I said to Barry, "I think we're both going mad." I said, "They must," and he said, "They weren't. There was nothing there." And I said, "Well, I think we've sort of finished for tonight. I think we ought to go home." So we went to go out of the cemetery, and the gate was locked. So, and we couldn't undo it. So we had to scale the hedge of the cemetery to get out. I didn't see the child anymore. I was moaning about him all the way home. And I got home, and my husband said, "I'm going to go up and see Lynn and Pete," which were 2 friends of ours, "and I'll be back in a minute. I suppose you can't wait to start transcribing this tape." So I said, "Yeah, I'll just get on with it." I said, "That blasted kid I hope I can still hear what I'm saying over this child." So I pressed play and I started typing it out, and it came to the bit where I was talking to him the first time, and you could hear me, but he wasn't on it. I could hear my husband over the other side of the cemetery talking into his machine, but the child was not on the tape. So I thought, well, that's weird. So I carried on with what I was doing, got to the bit where I was by the crypt, and I could hear me again talking to this child, but he wasn't on it. And this started to really freak me out then. So I rang up my husband at my friend's and I said, "Will you come home?" I said, "Because there's something ain't right." And he said, "What is it?" I said, "The kid isn't on the tape. And he should have been, because I can hear you." And it was a brand new tape, and he was stood right next to me. So he came home and he brought my friends down with him, and I was a bit shook up by then. And Lynn's, that my friend, said to me, well, perhaps he's on the other side of the tape. I said, well, only use one side of it. It's a brand new tape. And she said, well, just turn it over and just see if there's anything on the other side of the tape. She said, I don't know, just do it. So I turned this tape over. Nobody else could have fiddled with it or anything because it was with me all the time. And it started playing. And first of all, for a minute or so, there was nothing. And she said, what do you think it was? This kid, what do you think it was? And this voice came out of the tape, and it was like guttural. First of all, it started reciting a children's nursery rhyme. And it was like that. And the nursery rhyme was Hickory Dickory Dock. And then she said, well, what is it? And this voice said, you will never know. And me and my friend, we just panic. So I went down to my husband and said, you've got to listen to this. And he heard it and he couldn't make any sense out of it. And I said, I don't know what's going on. And we had a few glasses of wine after that. And I got up the next morning and I thought, I'm going to play that again. And it wasn't there. It had gone. But so to me, that child was a ghost, because we both saw it, but it didn't record on the machine. Neither of us saw him leave, or disappear, or anything like that. We just turned around, and he was, one minute he was there, and the next minute he was gone. So I thought, I'm going to put my big girl pants on and go back down there. So I went back down there right early during the day, mind. I went in, and there was nothing. I didn't see him again, but I just went in and said, look, if I upset you last night by getting really annoyed with you, I'm really, really sorry, but I thought you were real. And don't appear in front of me again. I don't want to see you again. And I left, and I've never been back down there since. So that was the first thing that happened.
That is fascinating.
Yeah, incredible.
That's fascinating, because I'm really interested in when you say that it was fields and then you saw bungalows. That kind of smacks of a time slip. Maybe you were there in a,
It was the weirdest thing, Christine, because honestly, I can swear to you, there was nothing there, because we both commented how unusual it was. And then, we was going around our business, and when you're dictating, you're looking at what you're reading and talking into the machine. You're not gazing around everywhere. But when we looked again, and it must have been about 3/4 an hour after the time that we said there was nothing there, all these roofs were there. And we did actually walk right up to the end of the cemetery to check there was something on the other side, and we weren't hallucinating. Because when something like this happens, you think you're going mad.
Well, yeah, of course you do. Of course you do. But it's fascinating. I mean, the tape recording is fascinating. What
I burned the tape 2 or 3 days later. Once I finished I burned it because I was worried.
I would have loved to.
But he wasn't on it anyway.
Yeah,
but I mean, but he wasn't on it.
Yeah.
And like you say, it was just me. So again, if I was saying that to anybody, they would just say, oh yeah, well, he wasn't there in the first place. You're just talking to yourself. But he was there. And I was scared, to be honest with you, that it was going to turn out in my house, because like I said, I've had the house I'm in now, I've had it cleansed twice because of I was being attacked. And my cousin, who's passed away now, she was a medium, and she used to go around cleansing houses. So I had to get her in twice to do mine. And the first time something happened, I wasn't attacked, but my dad was up visiting, and he was in the dining room, I was in the front room, and I come out and he said, "Here, maid," he said, "that plant over there, it just shook." And I said, "What are you on? You're on the right funny tablets or something, are you?" I said, "Because how can it shake? There's no draft or anything." And I didn't believe him. And then we were both sat down having dinner one night, and this plant, it started to shake, but it was from the bottom of the plant all the way up through. It was, and there was no windows open, there was no doors open, and then the keys, because one of the doors going out of my dining room used to be the back door, started to rattle. So I called my cousin in and I said, I don't like this. Because at the time we was looking after somebody who was terminally ill. So we was taking it in shifts to go over to his house. I said, I got to spend the night on my own and I'm going to lock myself in the bedroom. So, but would you come over and see what it is? And what it was the guy who owned the house before me committed suicide down the end of my road in Magnet's yard. And he died. He did it the same day as my first husband did it, actually, about 2 miles further from him. And his son had come home from the forces in my dining room, not on purpose. He got drunk and he choked on his own vomit. And my cousin said to me, it's him. So she said, it's all right. It won't happen again. I've passed him over. So I thought, okay, fair enough. And then it went on a few years. And we had a lodger here living with us. He was homeless and we took him in. We gave him a home for about 12 years until he sorted himself out. And I was in bed one night reading a book and I felt something slam me into the pillow, sort of push me into the pillow. And I thought, have I just dreamt that? Have I gone to sleep thinking I'm reading, but I'm not, you know? And so I sat up in the bed with the book and you talk to yourself and you think, yeah, it's me. I'm imagining things. And it happened again, but by this, I was really definitely wide awake. Something grabbed me round the throat. I couldn't see anything. I couldn't see anybody there. And the next day I had finger marks around my neck. And the shower on my ensuite started turning on its own. The light would come on in the bedroom on its own. So I got hold of my cousin again. I said, I got another one. I said, I don't know who it is, but can you come and shift it on? And I showed her my husband seen the marks on my neck. They stayed there for about 2 weeks. It was just like somebody gone like that, but it was that side of my neck. And she came in and she said that the spirit was attached to my lodger, who when he was homeless was friendly with a guy who was a heroin addict who died, and he blamed Steve for his death, and he could never get his attention, and he knew that he could get mine, and that's why he did it. So she went around with sage and cleaned all the rooms, and I thought, well, is she telling me the truth or not? I don't know. And when Steve came in from work, I said to him, did you used to have a friend? She gave me a name. I'll say Martin, but I can't remember what name she said, to be honest. And he went, yeah. I said, was he a addict? And he went, yeah. I said, did he die? He went, yeah. Why? I said, because thanks to you, he came here and attacked me the other night, trying to get your attention. And he refused to talk to me about it.
That suggests to me that you have a psychic ability that could be...
That's exactly what I was going to say, Christine, yeah.
I've heard of other people that have been not attacked, but spirit has made itself known, and they've gone on to be mediums. So they obviously, or this spirit obviously saw in you that you could perceive him some way, or he could get to you. Do you do anything like that? You know, mediumship.
I don't, because like I said to you before, I'm trying to fit everything in the hour that we've got. When I was 16, like idiots, like kids do, we did a Ouija board. And we all thought somebody was pushing it. I won't go near one now, not for love nor money. But we said, I can't remember which one of us said, if there's somebody there, walk across the room. And we saw, all of us saw it, a man walk across my mother's kitchen and disappear through the wall. And you've never seen a load of kids get out of a house so fast in all your life. When my mum came home that night, I was outside. I sat on the wall because we didn't know what we was doing. We didn't realise then if you bring something in, you've got to know how to put it back, or you've got to close a session properly or whatever. And for ages after that, we'd hear footsteps on the stairs in my mum's house. My cousin, she wouldn't go upstairs in there. And again, I had something push me up it there as well. you would get a feeling that there was something left in the house. And again, one night when I was on my own, I heard these footsteps come down the stairs, and I heard breathing outside the front room door, which I'd locked, not thinking, well, they could walk through that. And I went out the window. Literally, I went out the window. There was no way on this earth I was going to open that door. So I haven't pursued it because I'm always worried I'm going to bring something bad around me. I think you've got to know what you're doing.
Absolutely, you do. But I would say that's probably what was going on there with that. And I will say, once you learn how to, you won't have things, sort of attaching themselves. Can't talk about that now because it's totally different. But yeah, I get that. I get that. A lot of people that come to mediumship were quite scared of it because they didn't understand. But yeah, so wow, there's some interesting stuff going on then.
About the boy, basically, have you seen any other full body manifestations elsewhere?
The second one that I seen was the boy. The third one I seen was my dad's ex-partner. She was a medium, and I told her, whatever you do, don't ever appear in front of me in the dark. If I'm going to see you, let me see you in Tesco's or something like that. And
yeah, that's fascinating. It seems to be in the family because the more people that we speak to, they'll start experiencing things that you have or have done so for many years. They're not mediums themselves, and then they discover, okay, well, my mum was a medium, or somebody quite close by to me was. And it's not like mediums are trying to cause trouble all the time anyway. People like us just want to be left alone, quite frankly. But sometimes chaos follows us, and whether we like it or not, whether we accept it or not, it just seems to do so. So like I said, if your mother was a medium, then it's likely that they would have been drawn to her kind of light in the dark, so to speak.
Yeah, it was my stepmom. It wasn't my real mum.
Inherited. I saw your stepmum. Well, yes, step-parents could be real parents too, I suppose. It depends on the way you see them, really. But yeah, either way, it could kind of be her energy is kind of, aligning with, your energy could be aligning with her abilities. It could be awakening something in yourself, maybe, that lied dormant. So these things happen sometimes too.
She would prove to me that there was something on the other side. And I said to Christine she never saw my new bathroom. And when she died, again, I've got a thing about stairs with me. I heard somebody come up the stairs, open the bathroom door, and there was nobody there. My dog went berserk. It was as if the atmosphere was as if all the air had been sucked out the room. It was like being sat in a vacuum. And the dog was begging on the bed as if there was somebody there, but I couldn't see anybody. But I think the dog probably did.
So you're getting physical feelings then? You're kind of feeling something it's not just what you're visually seeing.
Yeah, and smells. Her perfume, when after she died, I would walk up the stairs and you would just get this waft of perfume come flying down the stairs at you. When I actually saw her, I was in Gran Canaria. I take my dad to Gran Canaria, and I looked across the road from our hotel, and she was stood there. And I said to Barry, oh, Ruth is over there stood up. And he looked and he said, where? And she'd gone. And I think that was the proof, because I'd said to her, don't sit on the end of my bed or anything like that, because I'll go out the window. Because I'll think I'm being broken into rather than anything else. It was her perfume, and I had it on the last story. I'll quickly tell you that, then you can ask me anything you want. I don't mind. My friend, he was seventh son of a seventh son, so he allegedly had special powers. I was in his house once and a cup exploded on his table. He said he had spirits in his house. I never sensed them being there, but he said he did. And he got bowel cancer. And I went up to his house one day, and the nurse came in and said they was going to put him on a syringe driver. And I had to go out because I knew what that meant. That was the beginning of the end, and I couldn't handle it. And he came out and he said, look, I'm ready to go. I just want to be with my wife. I'm not scared of dying. He said, I know that's what's going to happen. He said, and I know it's going to be quick. She's been gone 2 years and I've had 2 years of hell, and I just want to be back with her. And he said, but I want you to do something for me. And I said, well, what's that? And he said, will you take my funeral service for me? Will you do my eulogy? Will you arrange my funeral? Because my daughter's not capable, his adopted daughter. And I went, yeah, I'll do that for you. That's fine. So I said, okay, right, what before, because they was coming back in about 2 hours to put the syringe driver in. And I said, what songs do you want at your funeral? Let's talk now so that I know I get it right. So he gave me his songs that he wanted. I said, what areas of your life do you want me to talk about? If there's anything specific you want me to say, tell me now. And he did. So I wrote it all down and I said, I'll come back tomorrow and I'll read it to you and you can say, yeah, that's what I want. Or no, that isn't, change this or whatever. And he said to me that, that would be fine. And I went, and he also said, I'm scared of being alone in the chapel of rest. So will you come and see me? I said, for you, I'll come every day. Until the funeral, I'll come and I'll sit with you and I'll talk a load of rubbish. For God's sake, don't answer me back. But I will sit and I will talk to you. And he said, and will you put my favourite aftershave on me every day? I said, yeah, I can do that. I'm not scared of dead people, dead bodies and stuff. So I went up the next day and he was too far gone he was like half there and half not. So I read this eulogy to him and hoped that it was what he wanted. And he passed the next day. So I took over all the funeral arrangements. I arranged it all. And every day for 10 days, I went into the chapel of rest and I sat with him, held his hand just as I promised I would. On the last day that I went, I decided, because he put me in charge, that he was coming home for the night. I said to the funeral director it was the next day, night before, will you bring him home so he can leave from home and not from here? Because I know that's where he lived with his wife. That's what he would want. So he said, yeah, okay, I can do that. So I said, so I'm going to go in and sit with him now. And then when I leave, because the daughter don't want to come again, can you seal the coffin? And I'll come in the morning and just stand by the coffin before you bring him home. So I went in and the funeral director had always left this bottle of aftershave out for me and it wasn't there. And I said to him, where's the aftershave? And he said, oh, it must be in the back. So he went in the back and he said, oh, I can't find it. And he came out and he locked the door. He said, I have to keep that locked because we've got other people back there and whatever. And you can get some people that are a bit weird. So I said, yeah, okay, that's fine. So anyway, I stood there chatting to him, to Pedro, not the funeral director. And I said, I can't give you your aftershave, my love, because they can't find it. They don't know where it is. And I said, I bet you're sat there laughing to yourself, aren't you? And he's the only dead person I've ever seen that was smiling when he died, actually. And all of a sudden, again, the smell of this aftershave, it just filled the room. And there was no aftershave there because they couldn't find it. And I said, that's you, innit, you bugger? I said, you're letting me know that you're here. I said, that's okay. I don't mind. I said, that's great. Thank you. I don't mind that at all. And I said, you got me a bit longer tonight because my husband had gone up the bookies. I said, he ain't here yet. So I'm just going to sit at the foot of your bed, which is what I refer to his coffin as, and just spend some time with you. So I sat at the foot of the coffin and I was just chatting about rubbish, really, because, I mean, it's hard having a conversation when you don't get anything back. And I heard a noise and I looked behind me and the door to this locked morgue had opened on its own. And I was out of that room. I was like Fred Flintstone. My feet weren't going one in front of the other. I'm sure they were going round in circles. I went out through that door to the guy who was in charge, white as a sheet, shaking. And he said, what's the matter? I said, one of them's trying to get out. And he said, what do you mean? I said, well, the door has just opened. And he said, it can't because I locked it. You saw me lock it and I've got the keys here. I said, you go in there. That door is open. I imagined it, mate. He said, will you come in with me? I went, no. I said, because they might all be stood there. I said, I'm not going in there. And he went in and he came out like a rocket because the door was wide open by the time he went in and he couldn't understand why it was. And I said, I'm going. I'll be back tomorrow morning. And he said, can you wait for me? So I had to wait for him. And we left together, and I went down and saw Pete's daughter, and I walked in the door. She said, "You all right?" Oh, well, I was hysterical. I was all right till I got there, and I went, "No, I aren't actually." I said, "It was all right with your dad." I said, "It was just I thought they were all coming out." And she was just glad she hadn't gone. And then the next day, I was very reluctant to go back in there, to be honest. But I thought, well, it's daytime. There's going to be people there working. And I went in, they shut the coffin, and I just had a last chat. And I said, I don't know if that was some other soul trying to get out of there last night to have a chat or whatever. But if that was you having a joke, it wasn't very funny. So I don't want any more like that. And again, the room just filled with the smell of this aftershave. And I left. He came home that night, and I went and I cooked all the food for the funeral. I took the service and everything. And I was left with a feeling that I did him well at the end. And I'm glad I did it. But that was the last thing that happened to me.
Wow. That the whole thing about the smell is really interesting, again, because so many people report it happening, and there's no way that it can happen. And it just, I love it. I love it.
Yeah, can I ask, did any other one smell the aftershave?
It was, I don't know if the funeral director smelt it when he went back in the room, because he didn't hang around in there very long, to be honest. He was out the door as fast as I was. He locked up and went home. So I didn't say to him, "Did you smell it?" I didn't think, I just wanted to get out.
When you hear about people having these really pungent smells, it's very often that only one person smells it, and that's the person it's meant for. So, you know.
My dad smelt Ruth's perfume as well. He smelt it as well, but with her, he smelt it, and also her natural daughter smelt it whenever she come down. It would just like go around you, and we all felt like a touch on our arm from her.
That's brilliant. That's amazing.
Because she was really into mediumship. Ruth was. She used to be in a spiritualist circle and everything. So she like sort of said, she always used to say to me, "The dead can't hurt you. The only ones that can hurt you are the living."
You see, I wonder if having an open mind and being part of it enables good communication when you've passed over. It makes sense, doesn't it?
Yeah.
It does to me anyway.
Like I said, that was her. And then seeing my stepdad walk down the stairs, my mum was upset that he died. He had a brain hemorrhage actually in the room that I'm in now. And she was upset the first Christmas without him, and I was in the dining room and I saw him walk down. Well, I didn't hear him. I saw him come down the stairs, go into the front room where Mother was, and she never saw him. And I said to her, "I've just seen John come in here." And she said, "Have you?" And I said, "Yeah, I seen him come down the stairs and come in here." And it didn't bother her that I had. And I told my husband the same thing. And he never got on with him. He went, "Oh, bloody hell, I hope he don't turn up the end of my bed." But I've not seen him since. So he's obviously
maybe he chose to be
peace.
seen by you.
I think it all points to you having a real strong ability that could be developed. Don't you, Stan?
Oh yeah, definitely. Like, it seems like you seem to have a very natural ability. It's not like, some people are just born with it. Maybe it's Maybelline, as if it goes so. But some people are just born with it, that they can just naturally switch on without making any effort at all. And to them, it's a second nature. But they never question it all their life because they're used to living with it for so long. And often people like yourself, and I would say myself as well, because I didn't really know it was not normal until I was much older, really. But it's only until they get to like older age they begin to realize, actually, now I have enough comparables. I know enough people to know that they're not experiencing this thing as well. So I'd celebrate it as a gift, really. And also, secondly to that as well, like, much respect to you for being with someone in their last few weeks, and also being with them after they've crossed as well, because it takes a strong heart to do that, because it's obviously knowing someone and loving someone and caring about somebody, and doing that for them is, I know exactly how hard that can be. So, like I say, fair play for doing that. And I think in a way you were chosen for that, really.
It was a privilege to do it. It was the last thing I could do.
Yeah, it's because you have a big heart, clearly.
Well, sometimes. Depends who it is.
A big heart for the right people, I think, but it's something to applaud, really. But yeah, like, at what age did you begin to? I mean, would you say you accept what you are now, at least what you can do now, or did it kind of come to you a while ago? And how old
Well,
were
the
you when you
first thing
began to at
was
least, you know?
I didn't get anything until, not that I can remember anyway, until we did that Ouija board thing when I was 16 and bought that whatever person or whatever it looked like a person into the house. And then I think it sort of developed more through Ruth, who was a medium talking to me, and she tried to teach me how to do it. Like, you close your eyes, lose it, get everything out of your mind, don't think about anything, and it will clear and you will see things. And what I couldn't do it. I couldn't do it. I think my head is full of so much. I just can't clear it. But talking to her, and like Colleen, who was my cousin, or our cousin, not my cousin, both of our cousins, she cleansed houses and things, and she did some really, really wild cleansing of houses. And she's passed now, and I keep saying I sit here I sat here a couple of times. I don't mind admitting it, with a spirit box thing, and I've said to her, like, Colin, if you're here, let me know you're here, because I just want you to know that I love you, but for God's sake, don't appear in front of me. But just let me know that you're here. And I've not got anything back from her as such, but maybe she's still healing on where she is, because her death was quite unexpected, really. And perhaps, and she's got children and she's got grandchildren, and perhaps she'd rather be around them at the minute rather than her daft cousin back down in Cambourne. But one day I hope that she contacts me, and I'm open to that if she does.
Well,
I'd like
anything's
her
possible,
to.
I find, with these. If you have the right connection, things pass over. Because my understanding so far is, like, when people pass suddenly or through trauma, they'll tend to spend some time in, like, an intermediary place. I tend to refer to it as a spa. I know, like, the book Christine recommended to me, the Blue Island as well. That's referred to a particular location as well. Like, but either way, it seems to be like an intermediary place where people just relax. 'Cause it's almost like a shock to them. They don't quite realize what's happened yet, so they need some time to just resettle before they carry on.
Mm.
At least from
Do
the
you know what, though?
conversations that I've had
When she
so far,
left,
but maybe in time.
I said to Chris, when she left, I didn't know she was leaving Cornwall till 2 days before. She thought she told me and hadn't. And I sat down and I wrote her a letter telling her, thank you for everything you did with my dad died, help him with the funeral, and thank you for cleansing the house for me. And if I get another ghost, I'm buggered. Thank you for the friendship and the love that you've shown me. And I really do hope one day that I'll get up to Wales to see you. And I come home, when I saw her, she was crying, I was crying all night. And I cried for 3 weeks every day. And, I'm getting emotional now. And my husband said to me, why are you doing that? And I said, because I know I'm never going to see her again. She's going to die. I know it. And she did. I've had things like that. In fact, Chris, this might freak you out a bit. Since I've been talking to you, I've been woke up twice with someone shouting Chris right next to my ear.
Oh my God, I'm going to die.
No, I don't think that. It was just like Chris, like that, as if someone shouted out the name.
Oh,
No, it might be another Chris, but I've just heard the name Chris.
Maybe. Is that before you got in contact with Christine?
No, since
Since
I
then,
read her book.
Yeah.
Since I read her book.
Yeah. It might be Christine's psychic advertising, like entering your mind, just to say, just read my book again, read my book again.
You could be.
I do think it's really interesting, because a lot of what you talk about is what people get before they realise that they have some ability, and you could develop that. But I'll talk about that with you another time, perhaps, because you have a strong ability.
Yeah.
And that's
Well, thank you for sharing your
I'm so
story.
delighted to talk to you both about it, because I haven't really talked to anybody like that about it, because of the case they think I'm nuts, which I think is quite common that
We've
people
all
do
been
think
there.
that as well.
I mentioned it in my book about people really believe that they're going nuts when these things are happening to them, and they're not nuts, you know. Some people can perceive the spirit world, or the spirit world can interact with them, and you're open to it. So I think you've experienced, I mean, that little boy, for instance, I find that fascinating.
He was as clear as you are to me now. There was nothing about his appearance. I couldn't see through him. He didn't float around. He was solid. You know, I really thought he was real. Weird, but solid. I can still see him perfectly. I can see every hair. Well, not every hair, but I can see the way his hair was where it was parted, the way it was on his. I can see him like I'm looking at a photograph in my mind.
Yeah, and you mentioned seeing somebody else that had died, and you saw her across the road.
Yeah, my stepmom.
That happened to me when my mother died. I actually saw her getting onto a bus, and it was like, it's my mother, and she'd only died that week. And I think certain people that have got abilities like you, I, and Stan have, can perceive people. I mean, Stan's recently had bereavement, and he's been experiencing stuff, haven't you, Stan?
Yeah, it's a common thing in my family. If it helps you to know that you're not nuts, like I grew up in a religious institution that directly told us these things can't happen, and it only can happen within the parameters that we've set within the book that we set. Yet much of my life I've experienced things. So just talking specifically about people kind of passing over. Recently I had someone in my family die, and they died at a specific time during the night. It was just after 3 a.m, and at that time, my sister's son woke up crying at exactly the time that he had crossed. Her son's quite young, so he will wake up in the night having nightmares and all that. It's quite rare, but he'd been going through quite a good smooth run, which is like a miracle for most parents. But yeah, and he just, after the police started waking up in the middle of the night screaming and completely out of his character, really. Like, it took a while to settle him. And then, later that morning, my mum messaged my sister and said, something really strange happened last night. My alarm was set for 3 a.m. I've never set my bedside alarm before, like, that early. Like, she loves sleeping in, my mum does. Everyone does in my family. She will not wake up at 7 a.m., let alone 3 a.m., bless her. But yeah, it just went off in the middle of the night, beep, beep, beep. She was obviously very angry, very annoyed. Did I set that myself? She said, but why would I go through the effort of doing that? Because
that's so
her alarm thing has to be manually set. It's like a 4 or 5 step setup to do that. It's not like
it's not like
press a button,
Alexa, you just tell it.
Yeah, still a possibility though. But yeah, but either way, the fact that both
I've
of
had
those things
that a
happen the
lot.
same night.
I've had that a lot. Like, my husband has come home and he said, he'll just like say, just talk to you a minute about so-and-so. I say they're dead. And he said, you know that. I've done that about 6 or 7 times.
You just know that the last time that you see them sometimes.
Yeah, well, it just comes in my head. He'll walk in and I'll say, you're going to say about so-and-so, they've just died, haven't they? How do you know that? I said, I don't know, I just do. And
got psychic ability.
When he was working at the theatre one night where we was doing some photography, and I stayed at home, and he said, why aren't you coming? I said, I don't know, I'm going to get a phone call. I said, something to do with somebody, do with you. I said, we're going to get a phone call, so I'm staying home. And I got a phone call, and it was a friend of his called Shirley. And I said, you're going to tell me that your husband's dead, aren't you? She said, yeah, he drowned in the fish pond this afternoon. I said, I knew that's what. I said, I knew it. I knew it was going to go. And I said, well, Barry's at the theatre. I'm not going to ring him. I'll wait till he gets home, because they were very close. I said, I can't ring him while he's down there and say, oh, by the way, John's just died. This afternoon. She came in and found him headfirst in the fish pond, thrashing around. He couldn't get out, and he had a heart attack while he was in the fish pond. So,
But the question, like, why did these things happen? Because it's fair enough having an instinct for that though, but then like, do you find when you experience these things, like, do you feel kind of guilty sometimes? I'm not saying that you should be though, because I feel guilty sometimes that I wish I knew sooner because I could have changed things. I could have.
You
You can argue things.
No, I just think people are
Life is a
going to think I'm
process.
nuts. I just think people
Yeah.
are going to think I'm crazy. But I don't think it just comes in my head. It's not like, I sit here thinking about who's going to die next or whatever. I could be watching something on telly and I'm like,
It'll just be
so and so's died. Yeah, I had one of my best friends lived in Basingstoke, and I was there, and her son rang me up, and her husband had cancer, and he said, "Oh, it's Hayden here," and I said, "Your mum's died, hasn't she? Don't tell me that. Don't tell me she hasn't, has she? Isn't your mum, is it?" And he said, "Yeah, mum died this afternoon." And it should. If he'd have rung up and said it was his dad, I could say, well, I knew he was ill anyway. But she just dropped dead, literally. And that happens to me a lot. And I think if I say, people are going to think I'm weird because I've said things to people before and they said, "Oh, I'm not inviting you around anymore because I don't want you telling me anything that's going to happen to me." But it just jumps in my head. It just comes. I don't look for it. It just comes.
It just comes, yeah. I get that because, like, I remember when my nan passed a couple of years ago now. The same thing happened, like I said, about my granddad, recently. When she passed, it was at a specific time early in the morning. And my sister was woken up in the middle of the night by... she actually had a dream that her grandmother was there combing her hair. Because as my grandmother was passing, she was there in the hospital bed combing her hair. Because my grandmother, my nan, she was very kind of well dressed. She looked after herself and all that, though. So she was trying to kind of just keep her looking as great as she always did. And so my sister had that dream where she was actually combing her hair instead. And as she woke up, she could still feel her fingers running through her hair. And she was kind of fully conscious at that point. As she sat up in bed, she could still feel someone's hand going down her arm very slowly, like almost like they were still holding a comb and it was still rubbing against their skin, the hand as well, if that makes sense. But that exact same time, I was woken up in the middle of the night by an explosion. And there's like a thing to the left of me where my bed is, like a little sort of window shelf thing. And it's like a glass holding case with like little objects in there, just things I collect really. And I had this big bang, like it sounded like somebody smashed glass and threw like metal across the room. I thought like something had just really bad happened. So I shot out of bed, expecting there to see like a mess everywhere, and looked around. I knew exactly which object it was because I knew it sounded like glass and metal though, and that was the only thing next to me that was that material. No, nothing moved, nothing. It was just the strangest thing, and I just made note of it that it was at, I think it was like 5 in the morning or 6 in the morning or something like that. Though then I went back to sleep for like another hour though, but it took a while. But then I woke up a little while later. Saw my sister was calling me and picked up the phone. We both said to each other, "She's gone, isn't she?" And we found out shortly after that she did. We knew that she was crossing over for a while anyway, so it's not like it was unexpected. But it's just we knew the exact moment that she went. And for us, it's like her saying goodbye in her own way. She's just like saying, "See you later."
It makes you like sort of, doesn't it? Like, flipping it. Not in a horrible way. I don't know how that's possible though.
Like, physically, how is that possible?
I think at the point of us leaving, there's an enormous surge of our energy as we leave the body, and somehow our psychic that loves all these people can touch all those people, and that's how you pick it up. I can't explain it any better than that, but that's what I think happens.
But it is the surge. But I think this is the perfect note to end on, if that's okay, because I want to respect both of your time, though. But thank you, Sue, for being here.
Yeah, thanks very much, Sue. Right. Great talking to you.
I think that's a really meaningful story. And
really, really interesting.
Yeah.
Something.
I hope in some way or form this gives you some comfort, Sue, just knowing that you're not crazy, you're not the only one. It's quite, believe it or not, quite normal. These extraordinary things. but quite beautiful as well.
It's nice to know there's two like-minded souls out there.
Yeah. Oh, there's many of us out here, don't worry.
There are billions more out there, believe me, and a lot of them are waking up now.
Well, thank you for having me anyway.
Yeah, thank you very much. Yeah, see you guys. Anyone watching, feel free to message us with any questions. I know we shared a lot over the last few weeks, and if you want to appear on future episodes, tell your story, just please send us a message. Or just ping us a message in the comments section, like I say. So stay tuned. See you guys. Take care.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye.